This episode, as with all episodes, exists thanks to the supporters of the show who contribute a mere $3 per month via patreon.com/copytradersclub. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. Copy Traders Club, where you can learn how to make better decisions and more money copy trading. I'm Gavin McCauley, my name and username on eToro. Today, we turn the tables on a PI who is a former criminal investigator and detective. We deny him some sleep, shine a lamp in his face, and demand some answers. Here we go. Season 2, Episode 28 of the Copy Traders Club podcast, and as always, my aim as an eToro enthusiast is to demystify this new and uncharted world of copy trading, understand what are the pitfalls and best practices, and how ultimately to succeed as a copy trader. In chats like today's, the aim is to answer all your questions about this popular investor and reveal more about them than anywhere else, so you can assess whether they might suit you. In this episode, we talk to Pedro Nunes from Lisboa, who was once a PI and is now a PI, with an interesting backstory and plenty of life experience. He's used to dealing with crooks, liars, cheaters, and grifters. Should feel right at home in the Popular Investor program then. Just joking. Here he is. Pedro. Olá, bem-vindo ao Copy Traders Club.
That's perfect Portuguese.
Muito bom, muito bom. Well, welcome indeed, Pedro. It's great to have you. As you know, you've got to answer a series of quick-fire questions to get past security. Ready for those?
Yes, ready.
Username on eToro.
pmnunes.
Date you joined eToro.
August 2019.
Date you became a popular investor.
March 2021.
Year of birth.
1974.
Place of residence.
Lisbon, Portugal.
Profession.
Investor.
Briefly state what you aim to achieve on eToro.
I would like to expand my investing skills as much as possible.
Name one of your investing heroes.
Warren Buffett.
Name one of your favorite investing books.
Richer, Wiser, Happier from William Green.
That completes the formalities. Let's proceed now into the VIP section here at the clubhouse. The wonderful Copy Traders Lounge awaits you. Pedro Nunes, aka PM Nunes, are you ready for this magical transition?
Let's dive in.
Okay, here we are now in the Copy Traders Lounge. Pedro, you take a seat, relax. You usually find yourself in Portugal's capital city of Lisbon.
Yes, I live near the center of Lisbon. I like to travel, but most of the time I'm in this place.
And we very recently spoke to Hugo Manonti, who's recently moved there.
Yes, but the last time I spoke to him was in Barcelona. Then he told me he was going to move to Lisboa, but we didn't spoke since he is living here.
Well, it's time for you to meet up for some pastel de nata and a little glass of port.
Yes, I think he's settling in. Then, of course, we are going to meet. I think he made an excellent decision because Lisbon is a wonderful place to live.
Yeah, I was there a couple of years ago, and I was just looking it up on Google Maps to see where we'd been. We were staying in a friend's apartment, which was near Mercado de Campo de Urique.
Yes, you say it right, yes.
And I was looking that up on Google Maps. That's a lovely place. Like, the big building, which is like a market, which has all those little restaurants, tapas and drinks. Very pleasant. You know that place?
Yes. It's. I live more near the center. That's also the center, but that's not as close as the center as I am. But that's a place that a lot of people like to live, foreigners too. Where I live now, there are a lot of people from other countries that live here also. In the building I'm living, half it's French and from other nationalities, because living in the center, it's a little bit expensive. So the center of the city has a lot of people from many other countries.
As I say, I was on Google Maps looking up the place that we stayed in, and I noticed that it's very near a school called Liceo Pedro Nunes.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So either you're a very famous dude or it's not an uncommon name in Portugal.
Well, it's not a common name. There is that Liceu Pedro Nunes, which was a mathematician, and it's funny because I have a story about that Liceu. I used to play handball in Liceu Pedro Nunes, and I was the goalkeeper. So when they were putting the name of the team and after the players, I was the first name. And they always say, you made a mistake because you put the name of the team in the first, but no, it's the team, it's Pedro Nunes, and the first name was Pedro Nunes, because I play handball in that Liceu.
Yeah. Well, he was a very famous guy. A little bit of research tells me Pedro Nunes, 16th century mathematician and cosmographer. He invented the rhumb line. Do you know what that is?
Well, yes, but I think its most famous invention was the nonios. Nonios, it's some kind of astrolabe. This one, the nonios, I don't know if it's the same word. It's a different kind of word for saying the same thing, but I think his most famous invention was the nonios.
Well, let me tell you what the rhumb line is, and you tell me if they're the same thing. It's the curved line you see on a globe that shows the shortest route between 2 points. Maybe for sailors, you don't just go from A to B because of the curvature of the Earth. It's usually shaped like an arc. He calculated that.
It may be the same thing. I'm not for sure, because I know the nonios is something like the astrolabe, so I think it's compatible with what you are saying, but I can't say for sure that is the same thing or not.
Okay, a little bit of further research for both of us
yes.
and the listener. Okay, so let's bring it back to Earth, back to your reality. You have a very unusual backstory in that your previous career was that of a detective, serious crimes investigator. Tell us a little bit about that and how that informs what you do now.
Yes, actually, my first job was my last job. My first job, I studied in a police university. Is something we have in Portugal. So with 23 years, I finished the university and I went to be the commander of a police station with 23 years. Actually, at that time, it were 4 police stations, because we had a kind of concentration of police stations. So being in charge of a police station, it's a very it's something that you learn a lot. It's very heavy, and with 23 years, I was commanding more than 200 people. And during that time, there was a kind of a neighborhood of the police station that was a place where they sell drugs. And I got involved in the combat of the drug traffic in that neighborhood. And it was that made me do the jump for the investigation. So first I went to be in charge of investigation services within the uniformed police. But 5 years later, I went to a kind of Portuguese FBI or DEA. And there was the place where I became a full-time detective, where I mainly investigated drug crimes internationally.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it's a very tough job, very difficult to manage with the family life. And because I took it very seriously, I used to say that 20% of the police officers do the 80% of the jobs. There are people who goes there as a regular job, but there are people who go there and dive deep and give everything. And I was this kind of person. So it was very tough. It was very demanding. It was very stressful. I learned a lot. The drug world is something very dark and very heavy and very organized, very economic also. So it was something at some moments like a film, but also very, very dark in terms of the human nature.
Yeah, no, I get the impression, I don't remember where I saw it when I was researching you, but I get the impression that you very much like to live life in the moment and encourage people to seize the day. And I think that's informed by your history in that area. Maybe because you've seen the dark side, you've seen people's lives turned upside down very suddenly and things like that.
I think the main reason was because I had a more than 20-year career, and there was a point where my fathers had a car accident, both my mother and my father, and that made me to seek for answers. What is our role in life? What are we doing here? And at that point, I began to meditate, something that completely changed my life. And I think that vision of presence in the moment, to enjoy the day, is something that I mostly get it from the meditation, to be present in the moment. It was that change from a practical hard life, from a more spiritual life, that made me nowadays see life like that.
Okay, and I think you initially developed a portfolio of real estate assets, which has allowed to free you from your job.
Yes, that was the way. I had a little experience in one of the divorces. The real estate market was down. The house was mine, so I.
Hold on. In one of the divorces?
Yes, I'm twice divorced.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were using the wrong word there.
No, that's one of because a police officer has a lot. It's something common. In my first divorce, actually it was not my first one. In my second divorce, the house was mine, so I had to rent it. It was around 2008. The price of the houses went down, so I had to keep it, and that gave me my first passive income. So when I decided to change, I started with the real estate world, and I made some investments in that around from 2016, 17. I made some heavy investments on that years that went very well because the real estate market went up, and I reached a point where I was with a couple of houses that were paid. And I realized that I could get my expensive pay by that block of houses. So it was the time I decided to quit my job in 2019. At that moment, I studied about financial freedom, and I made a very detailed plan. And I reached the conclusion that I didn't have to work for the rest of my life in 2019 because of the type of real estate assets that I have. I had a place to live with zero debt. I had some cash reserves. I have some investing reserves. It was the time where I started investing in the financial markets, and the real estate investments was what made me quit my job.
Okay, and let's run through a few other things. I've done a detailed investigation into you based on your social media and so on. So you like to walk your dog and meditate. You exercise a lot at the gym, especially in your eToro t-shirt. You like to share what you've learned, spend time with family. You like to smoke shisha, or at least you have a pipe in the background of some of your videos.
Well, I don't smoke a lot, but I went to a lot of countries, Arab countries. I was in the Middle East. And I enjoy a lot of their mentality of tea and shisha. It's something that I relate to.
You also drive a Jaguar, I think.
Yes, I changed my car recently, but I used to have a Jaguar, yes.
Okay, and you have a dog and a cat. Your dog is a Dachsund, which means badger dog. Here's a little thing I learned about Dachshunds, just as an aside. A typical Dachshund is long-bodied and muscular with short, stubby legs. Its front paws are disproportionately large, being paddle-shaped and particularly suitable for digging. Its skin is loose enough not to tear while tunneling in tight burrows to chase prey. Has a deep chest which provides plenty of space for heart development and lung capacity. Its snout is long. It's basically a burrowing machine, isn't it?
Yes. I have a very special relation with both my dog and my cat, which is more recently, and I never thought that I would have this kind of relation with an animal, but it spends all the time with me. It's incredible. It's something that an art police officer would never imagine, how it's possible to be so close to another being. It's my best friend. I can't have the words to explain the kind of relationship that I have with the dog, but also with the cat more recently.
And just as you were saying that, the cat jumped up behind you onto
I saw it. Yes,
onto the windowsill.
Yes.
Okay, so I always ask myself this question: how did I come across the guest? And I'm a bit puzzled by this because as soon as Ugo Manonti mentioned the name Pedro, I knew he meant you. And then when I went to look at you in eToro, I was sort of struck by the idea that you seem higher profile in my mind than you actually maybe are in eToro. Is it because we are connected through social media or something that I am always reminded of you?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there was a time when was the Web Summit year that I met Hugo, I met Gasper, and I said that I started the conversation with him, but I'm recent in the platform, and so I don't know where you have that idea.
Yeah, I can't quite work out how I know Pedro Nunes so much already prior to this. Okay, why don't you let the listener get to know you a little bit better when I ask you to tell us something you're very bad at?
Well, singing. I'm a terrible singer. It's something I can't do in any conditions.
Okay, I won't ask you to then. Instead, let's have a question from the art of people. Can you pick a number between 1 and 10 that isn't 7?
3.
What's your favorite charity organization to support and why?
Well, I will try to give you an answer. I do voluntary work because I have plenty of time. There is an organization that we call it ReFood, which recollects food from the restaurants and markets. And once a week, I give my car and I go to a supermarket in Lisbon and to 2 supermarkets it's a way of helping the world. So I could say it's my favorite charitable organization right now.
Do you mean you gather the food that's close to expiry date?
Yes.
Sort of thing that would otherwise be waste?
Yes. That's that.
And then it goes to like soup kitchens?
It goes to a place, it used to go to a place where they deliver every day. But now I change my day to Saturdays. On Saturdays, that food goes to another association, Moms and Kids. It's an association of single mothers, and it's very impactful for me to see the joy of the people receiving the food. The young mothers, they are very happy. It's something that sometimes it's difficult because of the physical work, but I'm doing more than a year ago because I think it's important.
Okay, Pedro, let's take a look now at your profile on eToro. If I could ask you to read from your bio the sections entitled Strategy, Objective, and Background.
Strategy: long-term investing with macroeconomics and diversification. No leverage. Objective: beat the market with capital protection. Background: accredited by the Chartered Institute for Investments and Securities. Investor with financial freedom and real estate assets. Operational police detective and serious crime investigator.
Okay, and let's have a quick look at your results over the years. As you said at the start, you've been on eToro since August 2019. So that little part of the year resulted in an annual figure minus 11. Then 2020, 7.65%. 2021, 8.97%. And year to date, 2022, minus 12.36%. How do you feel about your performance so far?
Well, I have different stages. In 2019, the 10% drop was a $50 Bitcoin investment. I just bought $50 of Bitcoin. And that drop was just that devaluation of Bitcoin. So it has that context. In 2020 and 2021, my strategy was a strategy of consistent gains with low volatility. For instance, in 2020, I had a risk of 2. There was a time where I have a risk of 2. So it was a very low risk with that kind of results, because it's the results that are linked with my story. With I have financial freedom for the rest of my life, so capital preservation is important. But in this year, I made some changes. The changes also are related with my life. I'm doing this full time, mainly because I like to do it, because I can do it. I don't depend on this kind of income. So I decided, I changed my strategy, and my objective is different. This objective that I have here to beat the market is something that I write 3 months ago. And this year I finally decided to go for the beat the market, but still with a kind of protection of the portfolio. But I would say that these results are the consequence of my decision of the strategy for the portfolio, and that is changing over time, and with the way I'm evolving also in my knowledge in this area.
So you started off with a greater emphasis on capital protection, and now you're maybe turning up the risk-reward ratio a little higher. Is that purely because of your personal circumstances, or also because you feel like that's what appeals on eToro to copiers?
Not any one of them, because it's more related with my evolution. I study a lot. I spend a lot of time of studying, and last year I made some real estate investments, but I stopped that. I stopped almost everything that I do. I'm a very active person, and I decided to commit it full time to this because it's what I like, and I decided that this is, from all the research I made, one of the best strategies in terms of this long-term strategy, being in the market, and it's more a kind of evolutional change. It's not related with my situation, because my situation it's very good. I have a lot of cash reserves. I have a lot of protection, and it has not to do with trying to get more copiers. I want more copiers, but in a natural way, in a consistent way related to my results. I'm not trying to appeal. This is my understanding and my evolution that represents my evolution.
Okay, Pedro, let's just run through some more of these headline pieces of data on your profile. Your risk score, let's have a look at that. As you've just said, your risk score used to be lower, but that's all true of every PI. It's a bit of a ladder over the past year. When I look at your 12 months, the first 4 months are dark green, followed by a period of light green, where it goes up to risk score 4, little bit 5. Last couple of months, average and max risk of 5. So it's still quite controlled. Are you happy with that level of risk?
Yes. The main reason it went up, it's because I went with the full positions. In the beginning of the year, I had some cash reserves. As the market was dropping, I realized that was the moment to enter in a long term. That's why I am beating the market by a certain amount. It's because I enter when the market starts to drop, and I think it's about 4% better than the market. So the risk score went a little bit up, but I make some operations daily, and I have some kind of assets that reduce the risk. So being fully invested, I think the risk score is fair.
Okay, copier numbers and assets under copy. As of the day of recording, 21 copiers and somewhere between 50 and 100K of AUC. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's like I said before. I think it's fair regarding the changes I made. We always see people with sometimes with good results and not so, with not many copies, but I think it's fair, and I think with my kind of evolution and time in the platform, I am committed to bring that the number of copiers and AUM up. But I'm thinking in the long term, with no pressure. We used to say the market is always fair with the person's results. So I think it's the fair number of copiers and AUM, and with different kind of results that I think I will get there. I will think the number of both copiers and AUM will go up.
Yeah, so you're a champion at the moment.
Yes.
The qualification you listed in your bio, is that the CC level 3 that you would need to become an elite?
Yes, that's right.
So that's already in the bag.
Yes, it was a way of learning too, because I wanted to learn, and of course the course it's a little bit, it's more a mentality of details, but also helps the full knowledge of the market, and it was very good to do the course.
Did you do it through eToro?
Yes.
And I've heard it's quite dry, a lot of the information that you have to memorize.
Yes, that's what the word that I forgot. It's a lot of memorizing. For 2 or 3 months, I take a dip in the course. But I think it's difficult. It's a difficult course for someone who's not in the area. A lot of details, things that are not important. But you always learn a lot, and I must be fair, and I think I learned a lot with the course.
Okay, trades per week and average holding time. Let me quote those numbers. Trades per week, it says here 8. Average holding time 3 months. Does that reflect the kind of investor you are?
Yes, as I told before, in terms of the component of protection, I trade some kind of assets more on the short-term basis, like gold, like oil, like forex, and so I always try in this new commitment of beating the market. I always try to do some operations that can enhance the gain of to the market and to minimize the drop down. So I make at the same time short-term operations, but I have a long perspective for the bigger part of the portfolio. So it has that both components.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about communication. You are active on both Twitter and YouTube. Got quite a lot of YouTube videos. Yeah, you've been making YouTube videos for about a year, I suppose. And your videos could be bracketed as your story, your strategy, and then various videos entitled things like 5 Steps to Financial Freedom, Money Management, How to Protect Your Portfolio, things like that.
I was a long time not directed to social media because of my former work. And then 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't have social media. So it's something I am starting with, and I'm still looking for the right formula. Especially I'm doing more content this year because I have more time. But I must confess, I'm still trying to find a formula to put content and to...
Yeah, it's not the natural environment for old guys like us.
Yes.
You know, I mean, sometimes when I have to go to the shop and buy things like, lights or microphones, and I'm like the oldest person in that shop. There's all these kids making TikTok videos, and it's slightly embarrassing.
Yes.
But it's got to be done. There's no better way to communicate with people than YouTube videos. Get your point across.
I have also a Portuguese YouTube channel, but it's more related to financial freedom. Nowadays, I'm concentrated more on this one. It's difficult for someone who has been in the shadow almost all my life to change, but it's something we got to do. And I'm trying different kind of formulas to try to have more followers and more content out there.
Yeah. You're doing plenty of things. You're sort of spreading your net quite widely in some senses you're making quite a lot of effort in various ways and discussing the psychology of investing and all these various elements. Do you know where your copiers come from? They're quite small in number, so are many of them people you know, or are they all strangers?
They came from different places. I have some friends, some investors, some real estate investors working with me. I have people from Australia, from Italy. It's very diversified. I had a moment where I lost some because I had funds to my second account, but there was a problem and the funds were added to my main account. So people got out at that moment. But I would say they are very diversified and...
Yeah, well, I think you're putting in more effort than your copier numbers show. You look like you deserve to have many more copiers, to my mind.
Gavin, I see a lot of cases of extreme good results with no copiers. It's strange. The platform, it's very, one thing is to have copiers, another thing is the results. Because this is like a social investing. So, and I think the opposite, people with not so good results, but with a lot of copiers. So my perspective is, of course, I want more copiers. I don't depend but of course, we will always like to do the best possible. We will like to evolve. And my perspective is it's in the long term, because I could have some strategies where I take some risk. And if things went well, I would have 2 or 3 months with good results and I would get a lot of copiers. And we see a lot of that on eToro, because people always try to catch the latest phenomenon, but sometimes they are short-term phenomenon. I'm trying to be consistent over the long term. For me, it's more important to have a sustainable growth than to have a rapid growth. I still feel that I have a lot to learn, and every day I study a lot, and I put a lot of effort in the research and the competencies. I always try to learn the most possible, and I know, for instance, in this year I'm beating the market, but I think in the long run I will be able to do that more and more. This is my real goal, or my real challenge.
Well, let's just end this little section when I congratulate you for finishing War and Peace.
I finished yesterday. I read it because there's a guy, Gasper, guys,
yes,
yeah. Book. Yeah, Nowadays I heard thousands of podcasts, and I heard a podcast where he recommends for people in this area to read War and Peace. So I make that huge effort, and I finished yesterday. And I must say, it's, in terms of a novel, probably the best book I've read.
And what did you think you got from it that Gasper was suggesting you might?
Well, he's a kind of a cultural guy, and I think as investors we must understand the human nature. And if we look at several phenomena, even crypto, even the people got too much excited or too less excited, and to the way Tolstoy puts the human nature and the way he explains it, I think it's not a direct formation in terms of economics, but I think it's, as a human being, as to understand life, I feel that it enhanced my capability to look at another human being, to look at life, to look at several things.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Do you copy?
Copytraders Club.
Copytraders Club.
Okay, Pedro, turning our attention now to your portfolio. Let me just give the listener an overview of what it consists of in terms of asset class allocation. ETFs, 57.5%, stocks, 40.5%, and crypto, almost 2%. You've got 17 ETFs. As you say, you're quite a safe investor. You're trying to beat the market, but also protect against the downside. Among the ETFs, I see various that are reflective of the S&P. There's SPY5 listed in London. There's VOO, SPY.
Mm-hmm.
If I add all those up, 25% of your portfolio is the S&P 500. Yeah?
Yes.
And if we add in the NASDAQ and the Russell 2000 to that, then we're up to about 37% of your invested amount is in the US indices. So that's kind of the basis from which you operate, right?
Yes, it's related with the downturn. I had a lot of cash. So when it reached several levels, -5, -10, I entered the market. So at that moment, and still in this moment, I think there's some kind of individual risk towards some kind of stocks. So I think for not losing the way up, it was a kind of a safer way. Since I was buying at a lower price, it was a kind of safer way to not losing the next way up. We might say that at this moment, the US market, it's a little bit overvalued with relation to other markets. And maybe in September, I will make some adjustments because the PE ratio from the US indices is the highest. we remove India, for instance, and maybe I could make some adjustments. But at the moment I entered these positions, it was because I was buying at a lower price, and decision was to not losing the way up. And basically that was the decision. And the SPY 5, it's because of the commissions are low, but SPY 5 it's an ETF, and SPY it's a CFD. So it stands, but for me it's important. And in the future I will rotate the positions to real ETFs like the SPY 5 is, and remove from the CFDs, because there are cents, but the important is not the cost, but the attitude. So for me, I will rotate to a kind of asset with less commissions. That's why, for instance, the SPY 5 position was open.
Okay, let's keep running through the portfolio in terms of asset classes. Bonds combined to almost 4%. Commodities, gold and oil, basically almost 2%. Although, as we will see in your stocks, there's also Barrick Gold and a number of oil companies.
Yes.
And then there's some other indices: World Index, Emerging Markets, China Large Cap, and Japan. Some other sectors that are represented: clean energy, semiconductors, and financial services. Does that paint a reasonable picture of the overall scenario?
Yes.
Okay, and then if we look at individual positions, your top 5 are Google, Apple, Chubb Corporation, which is insurance and reinsurance, Ford, and Berkshire Hathaway, which is increasingly another oil company these days.
Yes.
All your other individual stocks are below 2% and are a mix of mostly tech, biotech, healthcare, and oil.
Yes, as I told you, the backbone of the portfolio when I enter in the recent drop in the beginning of the year was to enter in the indices to not missing the drop on the way up. We don't know if it happened in July, but maybe it will go down further. But when it happened, I be positioned to go the way up. Regarding, I made some changes in the individual stocks. I think we live on very volatile times, so I removed some names. For instance, tech companies that drop almost 70%. So I removed. I don't think I have right now companies that are exposed to big drops. So I remove in the recent years, in the recent months, the companies with bigger volatility. I have some companies that have big drops, but they are more stable companies like Amazon, like Sony. These are companies that have a very stable position, and I don't see these companies dropping more than 40%. Recently, my recent positions, I'm monitoring golds a lot. I'm monitoring oils. I think in the short term, these are places where we can beat a little bit the market. The last positions that I put on my portfolio, it's related to China because they are in a completely different cycle. And there are lowering interest rates. They don't have inflation. Maybe very complicated China, but maybe they've reached the bottom. So my recent positions, I entered, for instance, Alibaba recently. I entered China Petroleum. I entered the emerging markets because maybe in China we are seeing the bottom, and they are in a completely different cycle position. And this is my latest interest regarding the portfolio.
And you mentioned earlier that you had a large cash position which you were able to deploy when the markets fell. Currently, your cash position is very small, isn't it? Less than 1%.
Yes.
Would you be able to realize cash should there be another drop? And you'd
Yes.
what I'm wondering is, would you sell out of some of your indices or those ETFs to buy individual positions at a lower price? Is that the plan?
The most obvious positions to do that would be the bond positions.
Mm-hmm.
For one way, they give protection, and the yield they are giving, they gave it starts to be a real yield. So if we have a recession, maybe it could be a good option. But if I see the market going up rapidly and the situation changes, I for instance, this 3 or 4% of the bonds, it's somewhere I can reach rapidly and put it in terms of long position. But I always make a short-term adaptation of the portfolio. I think it's something, now I have time to do it. And I have some positions, for instance, if the healthcare positions, I have some healthcare positions. It's some positions that if the market starts to be in a position to go up, or the situation changes in a good perspective, it's a position that I can kind of cyclical change in terms of sectors that I can make that adjustment in the portfolio.
And so you described yourself as a macro investor in your bio. Are you hanging on Jerome Powell's every word?
No, well, we must. I love to see that. I always see the Jerome Powell's communications, and of course, it's just a part of macroeconomics because, as I said, we have China with a completely. It's funny because we have the second largest economy in the opposite point of the cycle. So I would say even that I read some kind of one of the hundreds of podcasts that I listen, that one of the market recoveries started with the change of cycle in China. If China begins to recover, maybe it could be a point of recovering all over. So Jerome Powell, but there's a lot of things there. The war situation. We have oil we have food with a lot of pressure. So that's a lot of the macroeconomics as a geopolitical component that goes beyond the monetary policy. So it's an environment where I like to position myself. This kind of macroeconomic cycles and trends and.
Yeah, let me ask you a question that I asked to fund manager Zek recently, who's a macro guy. If you were to recommend one source of information for your macroeconomic news and commentary, what would that be?
But in terms of research of
yeah, like it could be a podcast or a YouTube channel or somebody you listen to.
Macroeconomics. Well, I have a vision of combining different things. Every day I read several journals, and for me that's a very important component of the work. I recently turned to several podcasts because of the recommendation of fund manager Zek. So some time ago I asked him where he does the research, and he told me he does a lot of podcasts, and even he recommends some to me, and I started to do more podcasts because, but I wouldn't say a single source.
Sure.
All the global information, and even in that sense, I have one thing. It's Airtable. I don't know if you know what Airtable is. It's a kind of database. Airtable, it's some kind of Excel, but with a database structure. I always put all the information I collect in that database. So because it's too much information, and I run all the information on a kind of database where I put all the readings I make, the annotation, even my watch list is in that database, because I think the difficulty of macroeconomics is the extent of the sources and the even in terms of effects, you have a lot of data. So I would say to have independent sources of information.
Would you like to tell us about your best ever and worst ever investments?
Well, best I would say I invested in a long time in Apple, so it's a company I still like a lot. I think they have still a long way to run. But when I look at the P&L from the early positions, I would say that that's not on eToro, but in other accounts, my best investment. The worst, it's difficult for me because I make a very good capital protection. And I understand and live the philosophy of Warren Buffett of not losing. It's some kind of I understand his obsession, and in my vision, we can't lose. Of course, we lose, but so it's difficult to me to put a worst investment because I always try to manage them in a way that they don't end up with big losses.
So you're happy to sell out of positions early on before they get too large, negative?
Maybe because I don't go to very high risk rewards positions. So if I go to, for instance, in crypto, if I go to crypto, of course I will cut it in early stages. Or if I go to a very highly volatile tech stock, I would put that because I think the return must be asymmetrical. In big companies, I of course, I'm not worrying with the drop on Amazon because I know that the probability of recovering is high. But in more volatile stocks, if I see that they are running to some kind of technical levels, I will cut the loss in early stage.
And what's your position on taking profits, trimming positions as they go up?
Well, it depends on a macroeconomic vision. For instance, I did that in the end of the last year because I feel that the valuations were too high and that level was unsustainable. So if I see the market goes way up from the valuations, I will do that. And I read recently the Howard Marks Mastering the Market Cycle. And I think he has that vision when the market's too high to change the positions to a more defensive position, and when the market is low, it's when we buy. So I would say if I would feel that the market was overvalued, I would make some gains at that phase.
Okay, let's turn our attention to copiers. Who should copy Pedro Nunes?
Well, at the moment, with the recent change, I would say I'm a broad person to copy with a very good risk reward. So I would say everyone could copy me if they agree with the strategy.
And what kind of person definitely shouldn't copy Pedro?
Well, I would contradict my last answer, but well, I would say that the people want to risk a lot with high risk persons that want to have some fast and big gains. Wouldn't be. There are other people that have strategies more related to that kind of winning and losing risk reward.
Okay, here's a question that might sound rude in English, but it's clearly trying to get at something. Pedro, what makes you so special?
Well, I think that my ability to change, changing from a police commissioner to a detective, then a detective to a real estate investor. I think that success in life is related to our ability to change. Even I'm starting at eToro, but I'm changing, I'm evolving. And I think that constant change and evolving, it's maybe one of the reasons that I think it's one of the good things that I have.
What changes would you like to see on eToro?
Well, I would say more assets. There are some kind of assets that for instance, they don't have a lot of Portuguese stocks. Sometimes I find interesting stocks that I don't find. I know they make a big effort in putting more assets. I would say for me as an investor, the more assets I have to choose, the better. So I would think they should continue their effort into putting the more kind of assets in eToro.
I did notice you had one Portuguese stock in your portfolio, EDP.
Yes, it's the Portuguese electric company. And one of the decisions I didn't mention because I have a lot of dividend stocks also. I checked recently. I have 2.4% yield, which is the double of the S&P 500, and this Portuguese stock has a yield of 4%. I think the current environment and the difficulties of the current situation, one of the possibilities to choose gains through dividends. The EDP position is related to a dividend stock. This is why I have it.
Okay, if you were a copy trader, what would your approach be to copying?
Well, I would say to choose 4 or 5 people with different profiles, of course, related to my philosophy of investing, but maybe with different levels of risk, with different strategies. Because let me tell you, one thing I see, it's there are a lot of people have similar strategies. You had a lot of people with crypto strategies, tech strategies, and this is 80 or 90% of the strategy. And so I think eToro should have more kind of strategies, more kind of people, more kind of ideas. So I would probably copy people with completely different ideas and strategies.
I think I can hear the Dachsund in the background.
No, it's the pigeons. It's the pigeons in the window. Okay. They put the cat completely crazy about it. But
you mentioned a couple of other PIs earlier. I wonder, what PI would you say you know best personally?
Well, I met some. I was at the Web Summit here in Lisbon, and I met some. I met Gasper, I met Hugo, and even Jep was here too. I met. Then there was the PI conference in London. I went there. But I would say I exchanged some emails with the fund manager Zach from long ago. But I would say Gasper, because I have a very funny story with Gasper. I think I can tell the story. He lost his phone during the Web Summit, and I used my former police knowledge to help him. And the funny thing, and we spent a day or two trying to recover the phone, and we were able to recover his phone. And I get to meet him at a more personal level, and he's also a very spiritual guy. So we connect at that level, not on an investing level, but at a personal and spiritual level, and we have some interesting conversations about that. Sometimes he is always traveling. I ask him where he is, and he says something. And at the personal level, I think is maybe the person I have more contacts. Of course, there are other Portuguese PIs. But at a personal level, maybe the person I check the most is Gasper.
Yeah, Gasper's a good guy.
Yes, is
Friend of the show. Okay, Pedro, let's wrap it up then. When I ask you, what question do you wish I had asked you during this chat that I haven't?
Well, I knew you were making that question, so I think it would be fair not to think about it, because that I would think during the conversation, because I don't know So I think you made all the questions. I don't see any area that of my story or my investing strategy. I think you covered all, so you made an excellent job.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm not fishing for compliments with that question. It's more like asking the guest if there's one thing they want to put across about themselves or their strategy, the way they invest, what it would be like to copy them, something like that, maybe that we didn't quite get to.
Yes, I understand in that perspective. I don't like to. I would say I won't like. You know that Portuguese people are not. Don't try to. We are very. I could say humble, but we don't try to sell anything. We are not good sellers. We are not used to that kind of mentality. But I would say that if someone is identified with my strategy, I think it's a safe way to invest, because we are talking about results, but people who don't invest, I met people with 50 or 60 years that they still are trying to get in. So this is not only about the returns, because the market gives a good over long periods gives a good amount of returns, almost like 10%. So I would say that to people who are not investing, that to give it a try, because this is the way. So my appeal would be to the people who don't invest or that don't want to take too much risk. And I think that if they stay with me for a long time, they will be surprised by the kind of evolution that I will bring to the results and to the portfolio. And maybe it's good when things are beginning and not to enter very high returns that most of the people are seeking. Most of the people goes chasing returns and get up with no rentability. I think fairly this is the right moment to enter copying me, because I'm beginning to my trajectory to higher returns with capital protection.
Sounds good, Pedro. Well, thank you very much for chatting to us today, and thank you for dropping by the Copytraders Clubhouse.
Thank you.
I look forward to watching your progress over the years and seeing how you get on over the long term.
Okay, thank you.
A big obrigado to Pedro for chatting with us today. Interesting to talk to someone with a different life experience from the regular. Good luck to Pedro. Check the links to his eToro profile, YouTube channel, and Twitter in the show notes. That's all from me. See you on Discord and Facebook. Until next time we meet at Copytraders Club, I wish you many happy returns. Obviously, anything you hear in this podcast is for entertainment only, not financial advice. Do your own research. This is just generic chit-chat. We don't know your individual circumstances, etc., and so forth.